Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another Book Nook. I'm Jordan Bartlett, and I'm here today with Elijah Menchaca and to talk about his novel, They Met in a Tavern. Thank you so much for being with me today, Elijah.
Thanks for having me. I always love getting invites like this.
Oh, and I love having authors like you on because I'm so excited to talk about this book. It's stunning. So to start off, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit about They Met in a Tavern?
Yeah, sure. I was born in Bakersfield, California, and then somewhere along the line, I made the colossal decision to accidentally meet someone online who catapulted me across the country and eventually to my college where I met my D&D group. And that's became a huge part of my life that 4 years later, I was looking down the barrel of losing. And that in turn left me with a whole bunch of feelings about friendships and growing up and moving on and just taking stock of where I was like, oh God, I am not where I thought I would be. I am not who I thought I would be. And I have feelings about that. And so that just blended into a soup bowl with all the D&D kicking around in my brain, and They Met in the Tavern came out the other end.
Perfect. Well, and so you already mentioned that D&D sounds like a huge inspiration for your novel. Were there any other pieces that inspired this work?
Yeah, I mean, there was a huge blender of inspirations that went into this. Music is the one I really enjoy talking about the most, just because it was so weird to me to be inspired by it after most of my life not being a big music guy, to suddenly have like Don't Threaten Me with a Good Time from Panic at the Disco hit my brain and be like, this is a character. I need to find a place to put this man. And that's how Brass was born. And then just a couple of Billie Eilish songs just made me go, oh God, I am in a weird place now. And snow's come about. And
Amazing.
and that last one real quick, that Malcolm Moore and Kesha song, Good Old Days, that one was just playing in the back of my head for the whole outro of this book.
Oh, I love that. And then that's wonderful too, because then when you listen to those songs, you'll likely be reminded of your novel and these characters. And I actually noticed on your website that you have playlists for each of the characters. Now, did that come about while you were writing them or afterwards?
It was about 50-50. Brasses was done before the book was done. And Snow was another one that just filled up super fast. Just any moody female singer song just got thrown onto like the slush pile, and I had to narrow it down from there. Those two got done super fast, and then other ones took more time that I had to like finish the book and get a better sense of them to round it out. So like Church and Phoenix and Angel, their playlist took a lot longer, but they all came together in the end.
Very cool. Oh, and I was actually listening to Brass's playlist the other day. It's very good if you want like some upbeat housework dance tunes for sure. So you mentioned the characters' names of the Starbreakers, the main team that we follow throughout the book. Phoenix, Snow, Brass, Church, and Angel. How did you decide on how these characters were going to make up Starbreakers?
I went about it two basic ways that sort of melded together. The first half was I wanted a 5-man band. I wanted like the classic arrangement. I wanted these characters to feel archetypal in a way that like you know them, like as soon as you met them, like that one's the leader, that one's the smart one. But then I also, as much as I was going in, I also wanted to twist it a little, just enough to make it mine and to make it feel like I was playing with it. So Phoenix, the leader, is also the smart guy, and leaders in most stories like this tend to be like the close range fighter, and Phoenix isn't that. Like in a fist fight, he will lose if he doesn't cheat. And then the heart, like you would think it would be like Church, the cleric, but it really ends up being Brass is the guy who's just like, he's the emotional glue that holds this all together. He's the one who cares about this whole enterprise the most.
And I love that you say that, because I was so, especially since the book really starts out with Brass and you kind of get that like, oh, he's the like the playboy, like very little emotional baggage. He's just there for a good time, not a long time. But I love that as you get to know him, he does, like you say, really show that he's the heart that holds everyone together. And even though he has this facade of like, oh yeah, I'm just here to have fun, he does these little things to get his teammates, and I won't give too many spoilers away, but to get his teammates on the same page and to be like, hey, isn't this great that we're
Yeah.
together? Yeah,
Yep,
I love
yep.
that.
And like Snow was the Lancer, and so the leader and Lancer always have a tight relationship. So I thought, let's explore that, but then let's also break them up.
Well, and yeah, it gave it a very uh real feeling, because relationships don't always work out. And then
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you're in the same,
I wanted there to be like that sense of like, I just wanted there to be a relationship that had ended in my story, because like you never have those. It's either like they get together and that's the end of the story, or like they're broken up in the past, but it's the story of them coming back together. And I just went, no, just like this happened. They're over it now.
well, yeah, or the third option is they break up and they never talk to each other again, which
Yeah,
I
there's that
mean,
one.
if you're really close at one point, it doesn't make sense that you would never look out for them.
Yeah.
And Snow has her own Snow-ish way of looking out for Phoenix, which is wonderful.
Yep. So part like the classic 5-man band roles were half of how I put them together, and the other half was figuring out how they all relate to the past. Because the book's big theme is like, how do we deal with who we used to be and how does that affect who we are now? And so I wanted each one to sort of hit it from a different angle. So Phoenix is the one who misses who he used to be, and because of that fails to see who he's become. And then Snow is the opposite. She does not like who she used to be. She much prefers who she was now, and because she's missing some of the good bits from before. And Angel is the one who thinks she can't have that anymore. Like, just like I fell for that trick once. It hurt. Not again. Brass is the one who never left. He's still like, look at Brass from before, look at Brass from now. He is slightly older.
Yes, yeah.
And then Church, I wanted to be the one who had basically figured himself out. And he was the one who'd like learned the lesson of like, all right, there was some bad stuff from before that I'm glad I'm left, but there's some good stuff too that I miss and I'd like to take forward. And him having that lesson was, I think, very crucial for him to be able to eventually work with all the others.
Yeah, if anything, Church was the one who had the most realistic and like true to life memories of the past. You could really tell when each of the characters would reflect, it was tainted by those perspectives that you gave them. Yeah, for sure. Good old Brass. He did never leave.
No.
And what were some challenges then that you faced when writing for the cast of 5+ characters? Because there's the main 5, but then there are quite a few
There's
other side characters. I actually fell in love with Ruby, who I didn't expect to, and she's quite the side character.
Really?
Yeah, she was wonderful.
I always love hearing which of the side characters people get attached to. Some of my other friends ran a book club, and they like were like, hey, "Can we do your book?" I was like, "Please!"
Oh,
and
so
they
sweet.
were prepared to riot for the lack of Gamma in the second half.
Oh. Gamma is the automaton. Yeah. He's just a head, right?
He's the robot head.
Yeah, the robot.
He's a decapitated robot head, and they loved him. It was like, we need more of him.
Oh,
but yeah, so part of it is just like being a part of the challenge, is just like figuring out how much was too many characters, how much is too much of bringing them back, because I didn't want the world to feel small. I didn't want to feel like we run into the same 2 people in this entire city over and over again. But I also didn't want to feel like I also didn't want the reader to feel like there were a bunch of people they had to keep track of. So like it was a weird balancing act to walk with that, with all the side characters. And then the mains, it was sort of a challenge. constantly trying to make sure that they all had something to do and something to contribute, that there wasn't one of them you could take out and the story would still work.
Mhm. And that probably because you're a dungeon master yourself, right?
I am.
Yeah. So
Author, dungeon master, time traveler.
Time traveler, yeah. Yeah, so that probably really was helpful all your years spent being a dungeon master, because a big skill that dungeon masters have to master is giving every character their spotlight moment and giving them all a reason to be there too.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was I did channel a lot of that. There's an old saying in like dungeon mastering circles where like, if you want total control of the plot, don't run a game, write a book. And like Tavern began as an idea for a campaign. I was like, ooh, I could like run a campaign where like everyone's playing like ex-adventurers who like used to know each other. Like, and then as I started thinking about it, I was like, okay, but I have too many ideas of how this needs to go. They'll mess it up. I'll do it myself.
Yeah. I'll
And
do it
so I
myself.
did bring a lot of of my DMing sensibilities, like making sure everyone was balanced. But because I wasn't running for people, I could afford to just have people. I could afford to split the party. I could afford to dedicate entire sections to just one person for a bit, without having to worry about 4 other people sitting bored at the table waiting for their turn.
Very true. Yeah.
There's a lot of D&D in its DNA and in its bones, but it's also liberated from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you read it, it's nice because there are those callbacks for people who do play the game where it's like, oh, I get that. That was for me. But it's not so ingrained in the ethos of Dungeons and Dragons that if you hadn't played the game, you'd be completely lost, which I really liked. Yeah. And so how did you choose? Because each character is so beautifully well-rounded with their flaws and strengths. And it's quite tricky. I find a lot of times it's tricky having that balance of this is a character's flaw, but one, it doesn't define them. And it's like not all flaws are flaws in every situation. Mm-hmm. So I loved how you portrayed these almost shortcomings of your characters as just voids that other characters could fill. So how did you choose each of your characters' kind of main-ish flaws? And did these influence the strengths that other characters showed?
Ooh, that, I mean, a lot of it, a good portion of it came to just my player brain of just like, we need to balance the party. We need to make sure we have someone who knows how to do this. We need to make sure there's someone who can lift the heavy things and hit the hard things. We need to make sure there's someone who can talk their way out of a jam. We need to make sure there's a sneaky one. So a lot of it was just me like balancing the party as if it were a game. And then from the emotional side of it, there were just, that was a bit more, honestly, just intuitive. It feels weird to say, but they were just like, if Phoenix can't figure people out, then surely there have to be people who can. Otherwise, how did he get through this? And then for like Brass, just he's a lot of fun, but he's also a lot. So clearly someone needs to be there to rein him in. Mm-hmm. And I think like some character mentioned that, just like, you're fun, but without the rest of them, you are more trouble than you are worth.
And I do love, because Brass and Snow, I think they're the oldest friends, right? They were kind of friends before.
Brass and Snow were friends before the group, just like Church and Angel were. That's a little less obvious in the first book.
Mm-hmm. And I really loved how they're so opposite to each other. Like to first look at them, you're thinking, why are they hanging out together? But it was just so beautiful to see how they really understood how the other one ticked, and they were a nice kind of almost yin and yang combination.
Yeah, Brass is the one who gets Snow to like make the leap, make the jump, and go for it. And Snow is the one who sees straight through Brass's bullshit.
Yes, which he needs people like that in his life, or else he would go AWOL.
If everyone believed his hype, he would be in trouble.
Yes, or he would have a huge fan following. And so in your novel, the line between hero and villain is quite thin, especially because we have this group of heroes who they were heroes in their heyday, and then something happens and they've kind of realized that, you know, one person's hero is another person's villain. So what are your thoughts on how to portray good and evil characters or ideas in fantasy?
I've got a few thoughts on it. I think that there's been a bit of a push against paragons on both ends of the spectrum. Like people, I see a lot of calls and push for like morally gray characters, and like I like them. There's a space for them, but I like my Captain Americas and I like my Maleficents.
Yes.
So I especially in fantasy, I think it's important for certain things to be unquestionably bad and it to be an uncomplicated axiomatic good to stop them and oppose them. And I feel like you need some of that just for it to feel nice and to feel rewarding, feel like something was accomplished in the story. When the whole thing is just like, oh, what are the ramifications of our actions? Then it's like, well, then why are we here? Why are we doing this? So a little bit of that's good, but I also want some very more black and whites.
Mm-hmm.
And that being said, I tried to balance the alignments of the Starbreakers. Like, so Church is the good one. He is good aligned, and then Brass and even Phoenix when he was younger were neutrals. Like most of the heroics the Starbreakers got into were an accident.
Mm-hmm.
Their day job was like finding expensive things and killing things for money. And sometimes that helped people, and sometimes it broke some things that they needed to fix. And then Snow started out neutral, and by the end, by this book, I actually in my head consider her evil aligned. I consider her as like selfish. She has no problems with murder. She will do it, especially if it benefits her. She will hang people out to dry. But she also does still have friends.
Mm-hmm. And I think, yeah, she definitely felt more like a Catwoman type character where you couldn't say if she was good or bad in general, but her actions were very self-motivated. And then based on how they benefited or affected others could be considered good or bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. She was such an interesting character. And so then when playing Dungeons and Dragons, I know that you're typically the dungeon master, the game master, but do you have a typical character, class, race that you like to play?
I'm a bit of a human. I'm a bit of a human guy. I'm very human centric. The farthest I ever get off of that is one of the half human races. I've never gone just a minotaur or even a dwarf. I don't usually go for. I stick for things that are basically me, and I think that shows in the book. Is just it's a mostly human cast with a couple of weird things sprinkled in there. And but class wise, I've played most things, and having done that, I realize I like classes where I can hit something every turn.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
like either with a gun or with a sword, I don't care, or with a bow, but I need to hit something. Like supporting or doing spells is just not usually my thing. And I always end up being the face and the lead and the decision maker and the leader. My group that I play with is a very go with the flow kind of group by and large. So I end up being the one who like makes the executive decisions, like, all right, time to go. We are doing this, we are going here. Get on board. They're like, okay. I once convinced the entire party that, all right, we're not killing anyone ever. That's our thing now. And they're like, oh, okay.
That's amazing. And especially in a game like Dungeons and Dragons, that takes a lot of extra finagling to then still get out of those encounters.
Yeah.
Very cool. And so then what character that you wrote about, and it doesn't have to be one of the main five, but which character would you say you relate to most?
Ooh, I bounce around a lot on them because I think a few of them have very big pieces of me in them. The biggest is Phoenix, I would say, at least to the get. A version of Phoenix has been following me in my writing basically since middle school. And he started out as just a wish fulfillment version of me, and then he is very slowly permutated into his own thing and his own person. But then he kept picking up other pieces of me, like a lot of his like mental weirdness and his offness with people. Like I gave him that just because I wanted someone like me in fantasy. So there's a lot of him like that. Church started off as my idea, just like my own feelings with religion. So there's a soft spot for me in there for him. And then all of my self-loathing, Snow inherited.
Or Snow.
That poor woman.
She's been through a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, and so I love to, with your characters, each of them has their kind of their Superman name, and then they also have their Clark Kent name. So we've got Phoenix is Armin. Oh, and I always get Phoenix and Church mixed up. Which one is Church?
Yeah. Church is Arno.
Arno.
I still regret never going back and finding a better name for him that didn't start with an AR, but it's too late now. It's in the
I love
world.
it though. And I'm much better when I read it, my brain gets it, but then trying to recall it, I'm like, oh, it started with an A. So yeah, they all have their aliases and then their normal names, but Brass's name is never mentioned. So can you share with us what Brass's full name is?
All right, that's technically a bit of a secret, but as a thank you for having me, I guess I can.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I
You're
feel
welcome.
like I'm in on a little secret there. So it's been so wonderful chatting with you. Where can your fans find this wonderful novel?
Oh, that wonderful novel is available on the Camcat bookstore. It is available on Amazon and at Barnes and Noble store. It is available from all of your favorite online book retailers and some dodgy ones.
And then where can we find more information about you? Because I know you have a YouTube channel and you have some blogs about both D&D and your novel. Where can we find your information?
So the best place for all things me is ElijahMenchaca.com. That's sort of where everything's correlated. If you'd like to just keep more up-to-date tabs on my nonsense, you can follow me on Twitter at PhoenixAgent003, which was also my Instagram handle, although you won't get too much there because I'm very bad at keeping up with that. And then on YouTube, I am Elijah Menchaca. I'm the one who dressed like a cartoon version of this, surrounded by white paper.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on my Book Nook chat today. I'll put all of those links in the little description down below. And yeah, thanks again.
Thank you.